A tax preparer looked me in the eye and said, "You don't understand numbers, ma'am. Just sign here." He was charging me $650 for a return that should have cost $180, and buried on page 2 of my paperwork a deduction I never authorized, a deduction that would have sent a piece of my refund straight to his pocket. Before we go further, if you've ever been talked down to in a suit's office, if you've ever been handed a paper and told to just sign, if you've ever sat across from someone who assumed you wouldn't notice, this channel exists for you. Subscribe, turn on the bell, because what I'm about to show you, you're going to want to use it. Okay, page 2. He thought I wouldn't notice. He thought a woman who rides the bus and works in a hospital kitchen wouldn't check the math. He was very wrong. This is the story of how I caught a thief in a suit, how a folder in my kitchen drawer became my weapon, and how I made sure he never did this to anyone else again. 3 months after I walked out of his office, his license was suspended. 6 months after that, his office was closed. But before I tell you how it ended, I need you to understand what $470 means to someone like me, because that's what he was trying to steal. Not thousands, not millions, $470. To a man like him, sitting behind a desk with framed certificates on the wall, that was pocket change. To a woman like me, that's 31 hours on my feet, 31 hours of waking up before the sun, 31 hours of bus rides and aching knees and trays of food for people who are fighting for their lives. He tried to steal 31 hours of my life with a smile and a pen, and he thought I wouldn't notice. My name is Rosa. I'm 49 years old. I work in the kitchen of a hospital here in Houston. I've been in this country for 30 years. I came with one bag and a phone number that turned out to be disconnected. Everything I have, I built with my hands. And I have learned something in those 30 years that nobody teaches you. The people who most want to take advantage of you are often the ones you're paying to help you. Let me tell you about the folder in my kitchen drawer. It started when I was 25 years old. A landlord tried to keep my security deposit by claiming I had damaged things I hadn't touched. I had no proof. I lost $300. $300 that took me 2 months to save. I never let that happen again. Every pay stub, I keep it. Every tax document, I keep it. Every letter from the government, every receipt that matters, every piece of paper that connects to my money, I keep it. Filed, dated, organized, copied. Not because I'm paranoid, because I learned the hard way that nobody protects a woman like me except a woman like me. That folder has saved me 3 times in 30 years. The landlord was the first. Mr. Jones was the third. The second time, that's a story for another day. But it taught me to always make copies before I hand anything to anyone. Remember that. It matters for what happens next. For 3 years, I had a tax preparer named Patricia, a woman from my church. Calm, thorough, fair. She charged me a reasonable price, explained everything clearly, and I always left feeling like I understood what I had signed. Then Patricia moved to San Antonio, and I was left looking for someone new. A coworker at the hospital, a woman named Berta, who worked in laundry, mentioned a place near where I lived. Mr. Jones, she said, been doing taxes in the neighborhood for years. Affordable, experienced. She'd used him twice. No complaints. I made an appointment. I should have paid more attention to the first impression. The office was fine. Nothing alarming. Certificates on the wall, computer on the desk, the smell of coffee. But Mr. Jones himself, he was a large man in his 50s, reading glasses on a chain around his neck. That particular kind of confidence, the kind that comes from never being seriously questioned. He shook my hand without really looking at me, and he started talking. Fast, technical, lots of jargon, the way people talk when they're used to their audience not keeping up. I kept up, but I didn't say so. Not yet, because I had a feeling, and I have learned to sit with my feelings before I act on them. I gave him my documents, W-2 from the hospital, a record of some side income. I had helped a neighbor with food preparation for a few events, less than $800 for the whole year, my Social Security information, and my previous year's return, the one Patricia had prepared. He looked through them, quickly, too quickly, the way someone looks at papers when they've already decided what they're going to do with them. He typed things into his computer, asked me some questions. Standard things. I answered clearly and correctly. Then he printed something and slid it across the desk. "This is the preliminary breakdown," he said. "Your federal refund will be approximately $320. He paused. "My fee for this service is $650. I looked at the paper. I looked at him. "$650? That's correct. For a standard return?" He smiled. Not a real smile. The kind of smile that isn't quite a smile. "There are complexities in your return, Mrs. Santos. The supplemental income requires additional forms. It takes time." "What forms?" I asked. He named some. Technical names. Long names. I took out the small notepad I carry in my purse, and I wrote them down. He seemed surprised by that. Just slightly. But he continued, "I'll need you to come back in 2 days to sign the final return. I'll have everything ready." I said I would come back. I want you to notice something. At this point, I didn't know for sure that anything was wrong. I had a feeling, but feelings aren't evidence. What I had was a piece of paper with his numbers on it, and a notepad with the names of the forms he had mentioned, and a folder at home with every document from every year. That was enough to find out the truth. I went home, I sat at my kitchen table, and I opened my folder. First, the previous year's return, the one Patricia had prepared. I looked at how she had handled the supplemental income, the side work for my neighbor. She had documented it a specific way. I remembered because she had explained it to me, step by step, at the time. What Mr. Jones was proposing didn't match. The forms he had named, I didn't know them, but I know where to find information. That evening, I went to the library. I don't have internet at home, but I know where to find it. I looked up those forms. They were real, official IRS forms. But for income at my level, less than $800 in supplemental income, they were not what was typically required. There was a simpler path. A cheaper path, a path that Patricia had already shown me. I wrote everything down. Then I looked at the fee, $650. I thought about what Patricia had charged me last year for a nearly identical return, $170. $650 versus $170 for the same work. But I still didn't have proof. I had suspicion. I had comparison, but not proof. So I did something I had never done before. I called the IRS helpline, not to report anything, not yet, just to ask questions. The woman on the phone was patient. I asked her, for supplemental income at a certain level, what forms are typically required? She told me. I asked her, for a standard return with one W-2 and minimal supplemental income, what is a typical fee range? She told me. When I hung up, I had 2 full pages of notes, and I knew 3 things for certain. 1, the forms Mr. Jones had named were not required for my return. 2, the fee he was charging was roughly 4 times. 3, he was counting on me not to check. But there was still something I didn't know, the deduction. The unauthorized deduction on page 2 of his preliminary breakdown. I hadn't looked at it closely enough the first time. I was about to. The next morning, I spread everything out on my kitchen table. His preliminary breakdown on one side, my previous returns on the other, my notes from the IRS call in front of me. And I looked, really looked at page 2 of what he had prepared. There it was, line 14, a deduction I did not recognize, a deduction I had never mentioned to him, a number that did not exist anywhere in my folder. I looked up what that line meant, and my hands went cold. It was a fee, a preparation fee, but not the kind that goes to the IRS. It was structured to redirect a portion of my refund through his office, through him. Not the full refund, just a piece of it, small enough that most people wouldn't notice. But I noticed. I sat there for a long time, staring at that number, thinking about every person who had walked into that office before me. Berta from the hospital. She'd used him twice. Had she noticed? Had she checked? How many others? How many people in my neighborhood? People who work hard, who don't have time to go to the library and look things up, who just want someone to handle the paperwork so they don't make a mistake with the government. How many of them had signed where he told them to sign? I thought about his smile, that smile that said, You won't understand this anyway. I had an appointment the next day. I was going to keep it. I walked into his office the next day at exactly 2 p.m. Same desk, same certificates, same smell of coffee, same Mr. Jones, reading glasses on, smile ready. He had the return waiting. He slid it across the desk with the same practiced gesture, the gesture of a man who expects signatures, not questions. I picked it up. I didn't look at him. I read. He waited. I turned to page 2. He shifted in his chair. I read every line, slowly. He cleared his throat. Is everything in order, Mrs. Santos? Mr. Jones, I said very calmly, can you explain this line here? I pointed to line 14, the deduction that didn't belong. His expression didn't change. That's a standard preparation adjustment, he said smoothly. Industry practice. I see, I said. And this adjustment, it's based on what documentation exactly? A pause. Short, but there. It's calculated based on the complexity of your return, he said. But I didn't authorize this deduction, I said, and I didn't provide any documentation for it. Another pause. Longer this time. Mrs. Santos. His voice had changed slightly, a little tighter. These documents are quite technical. I've been preparing taxes for over 20 years. I assure you, everything here is correct. I opened my purse, I took out my notepad, and I placed it on the desk between us. I made some calls, I said. He looked at the notepad, at the 2 pages of handwritten notes, at the names of forms and the numbers from the IRS helpline. The forms you listed, I said, are not required for supplemental income at my level. The IRS confirmed this. His jaw tightened. The fee you're charging, I continued, is roughly 4 times higher than the standard rate for a return like mine. I pointed to line 14 again. And this deduction, this adjustment, is not authorized by me, is not documented anywhere in my records, and appears to be structured to redirect a portion of my refund through your office. Silence. Complete silence. Then he said, You don't understand numbers, ma'am. Just sign here. I thought about 30 years of bus rides. I thought about cracked hands and aching feet. I thought about $300 I lost to a landlord when I was 25 because I didn't have proof. I thought about the folder in my kitchen drawer. No, I said. I picked up my documents, every single one. I had brought copies, originals at home, as always. I took the copies back from his desk. Mrs. Santos, you're making a mistake. You clearly don't understand how these things work. You'll end up paying more somewhere else, and the IRS doesn't look kindly on late filings. I put my documents in my bag. I closed my purse. I looked at him one more time. Thank you for your time, I said, and I walked out. I sat in the parking lot, not because I was afraid, not because I was second-guessing myself, because I was thinking. I was thinking about Berta. She'd used him twice. No complaints, she'd said. But did she check? Did she compare his return to what she could have gotten elsewhere? I was thinking about the neighborhood, the small businesses, the families, the people who came to this country with nothing and built everything from scratch, just like me. How many of them had walked through that door? How many of them had signed where he told them to sign? I was thinking about that deduction on line 14. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That wasn't industry practice. That was intentional. Have you ever caught someone trying to take advantage of you and had to decide what to do about it? I mean, really decide. Not just complain about it, not just tell your friends, but actually do something. Drop it in the comments. I want to know what you did. Because what I did next, it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I found a new tax preparer, a woman at a reputable chain office across town. I showed her my documents. I told her what I needed, $180. That's what she charged me. For the exact same return Mr. Jones wanted $650 for, $180 versus $650. But that wasn't the important part. Before she filed my return, I asked her to look at something. I showed her the preliminary breakdown Mr. Jones had given me. I pointed to line 14. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, very carefully, Mrs. Santos, this deduction is not something you authorized? No. And you didn't provide documentation for it? No. She looked at the paper again. This, she said quietly, is not standard practice, and it is not legal. I felt something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction, not yet. Confirmation. I knew what I had to do next. I asked her, if something like this is reported, who do you report it to? She told me. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my folder, my notepad, and Mr. Jones's preliminary breakdown. I wrote everything down, the date of my appointment, what he had told me, what his return showed, what the IRS helpline had confirmed, what the new preparer had found. I was specific. I was organized. I had documentation for every claim I made. I filed a complaint with the IRS Return Preparer Program. And then I waited. 3 months later, I received a letter. Not a long letter. Government letters rarely are, but it said enough. The complaint had been reviewed. An investigation had been opened. I would be contacted if additional information was needed. I was not contacted again. But Berta told me, about 6 months after that, what had happened. The office was closed. Mr. Jones was no longer practicing. Someone at church had heard that his preparer license had been suspended, pending investigation. Suspended. 20 years of practice. Ended by a woman he thought couldn't count. I didn't say anything when Berta told me. I just thought, good. Good. About a week after the office closed, I got a phone call. A woman I didn't know. She said she'd gotten my name from someone at church. That's how things travel in a neighborhood like mine. She said she'd used Mr. Jones for 2 years. She said she'd always felt something was slightly off, but hadn't known how to name it. She said she'd gone back and reviewed her returns after hearing what happened, and she'd found a similar unauthorized deduction. On both of them, she asked me if I would share the name of the tax preparer I had found. Of course, I said yes. I gave her the name, I gave her the address, and I gave her the same advice I'm about to give you. Keep copies of everything, every document, every return, every piece of paper that has to do with your money. Not because you expect someone to steal from you, but because when they do, and in this life, sometimes they do, you will have exactly what you need to stop them. I have been thinking about what it means to be underestimated. Mr. Jones looked at me and saw a woman who worked in a hospital kitchen, a woman who rode the bus, a woman whose English carried an accent, a woman who probably handed documents over and signed whatever was put in front of her because she was afraid of the government and grateful for any help she could get. He had a script for women like me. The script went, explain it fast, use technical language, charge more than necessary, insert a line she won't notice, smile when she signs. What he didn't account for was the folder in my kitchen drawer. What he didn't account for was a woman who had been protecting herself for 30 years, who knew exactly what she earned and how she earned it, who wrote down the name of every form he mentioned and looked it up the same night. He saw a woman who didn't understand numbers. What he saw was wrong. I understand numbers very well. I understand what it costs to earn $1. I understand what it means to lose one. And I understand that a person who tries to take what isn't theirs, whether it's $500 or $5,000, is making a bet. They're betting that you won't notice, that you won't fight back, that you won't know how. I noticed. I fought back. I knew how. And a folder in my kitchen drawer cost him everything. Tax season comes around every year, and every year there are people in neighborhoods like mine who walk into offices like that one. People who work hard, who earn honestly, who need help navigating a system that was not designed with them in mind. Some of them have folders in their kitchen drawers. Most of them don't. So let me say this directly. Start one. It doesn't have to be complicated. A drawer, a box, a binder, whatever works for you. Every pay stub, every tax document, every letter from the IRS or any government office. Keep the originals. Make copies of anything you take anywhere. And when someone tells you that you don't understand your own financial life, ask questions. Write down the answers. Look things up. You are not less capable of understanding your money because you weren't born here, or because you work with your hands, or because you don't have a degree. You are perfectly capable of understanding what someone is doing with your documents and your dollars. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Have you ever been in a situation where someone assumed you didn't know what you were doing, where they bet on your silence? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear about it, because I think a lot of us have been in that room, sitting across from someone who has the credentials, the desk, the confidence, someone who is counting on us to defer. And I think a lot of us have that folder somewhere, even if we haven't built it yet. That quiet knowledge of our own lives, that awareness that something isn't right. Trust that awareness. And if you know someone, a neighbor, a coworker, anyone who is heading into tax season without someone they trust, share this story with them. Sometimes the most valuable thing someone can hear is, you are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to say no. And you are allowed to walk out. By the way, Mr. Jones wasn't the only professional who tried to take advantage of me. There was a mechanic 2 years before this, a man who quoted me triple what the repair actually cost. I'll tell you that story next time. If you're not subscribed, now would be a good time, because there are more stories like this, and some of them are worse. Take care of yourselves, and remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is check the math.